A wealthy businessman dies, leaving his fortune to random individuals instead of his family. His estranged daughter investigates and finds out these individuals were part of her father's secret life. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lush, manicured lawns of the Clark family estate, a sprawling mansion that had stood as a testament to old money and tradition in the heart of one of the city's most affluent neighborhoods. Today, the grand old house, with its imposing facade of stone and intricate wrought iron detailing, seemed less a home and more a mausoleum, echoing with the quiet whispers of a family on the brink of a seismic shift. Inside, the Clark family gathered in the stately living room, a room festooned with heavy drapes and portraits of stern ancestors looking down from their gilded frames. The air was thick with tension, each family member acutely aware of the gravity of the moment, yet cloaked in their own apprehensions and grievances. Lisa Clark, a poised woman in her mid-30s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, stood slightly apart from the rest, her mind racing with both dread and a morbid curiosity about the contents of her father's last will and testament. Her mother, Evelyn, regal yet visibly shaken, sat ramrod straight on a velvet settee, clutching a handkerchief with trembling hands. Alex, Lisa's younger brother, known more for his exploits in tabloids than any real accomplishments, shifted uneasily in his chair, unable to maintain his usual facade of disinterest. The rest of the extended family peppered the room, each person a blend of curiosity, fear and greed, their true natures barely concealed under a veneer of mourning. As the family lawyer, Mr. Hammond, a portly man with spectacles sliding down his nose, cleared his throat to begin, the room fell into an expectant silence, the only sound the quiet ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the corner. With a somber face, he unfolded the documents and began to read, his voice a solemn drone that seemed to carry the weight of the secrets about to be revealed. Jonathan Clark's voice, recorded prior to his untimely death, filled the room, emerging from the speakers with an eerie clarity that made it seem as though he was there among them. "My family," his voice began firm and decisive, "you are gathered here today to hear my final wishes, which I have laid out with clear intent and sound mind." Lisa listened intently, her heart pounding in her chest as her father's voice continued to unveil his last desires. The initial bequests were predictable, including substantial donations to various charities and institutions which had marked his public persona as a philanthropist. However, as Mr. Hammond continued, the atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. "To those beyond my family, who have shared in my journey in ways no one else has, I leave the bulk of my estate," Jonathan declared, his voice unwavering. The room erupted in murmurs as Mr. Hammond read out the names, none familiar to the family members, individuals who were now, inexplicably, the primary beneficiaries of Jonathan Clark's considerable fortune. Lisa's mind raced as she observed the shock and confusion etching itself across the faces of her family. Her father had been a complex man, secretive and driven, but this revelation hinted at depths of his life that she had never suspected. Who were these people, and what had they meant to him? The lawyer continued, oblivious to the simmering tensions, detailing the properties, stocks, and assets now allocated to strangers, effectively sidelining his immediate family to roles of minor beneficiaries, receiving more as a formality than a reflection of affection or duty. Evelyn Clark gasped, her facade of composure crumbling as she whispered, "Why would Jonathan do this to us?" Her voice, laced with betrayal and hurt, echoed slightly in the high-ceilinged room. Alex slammed his fist onto the arm of his chair, his face reddening. "This is insane. We need to contest this will. There has to be a mistake, or manipulation," he sputtered, looking around as if expecting agreement or confirmation. Lisa, however, remained silent, her thoughts whirling. Her legal background urged caution and thorough investigation, while her personal ties to her father, a man she realized she might not have truly known, compelled her to uncover the truth behind these mysterious beneficiaries. As the reading concluded, with more questions raised than answered, Lisa knew what she had to do. Her father's legacy and their family's future depended on understanding the reasons behind these bewildering last wishes. She resolved then and there to delve into her father's secretive life, unaware of the Pandora's box she was about to open. After the contentious will reading, the family dispersed, each member lost in their own storm of disbelief and anger. Lisa, however, felt a magnetic pull towards her father's private study, a place that had always been strictly off-limits to her and Alex during their childhood. It was a room where Jonathan had spent countless hours, often late into the night, his work shrouded in secrecy. The study was a stark reflection of Jonathan himself, meticulously organized, with a massive oak desk dominating the room, walls lined with bookshelves filled with legal tomes and obscure texts, and a faint smell of tobacco lingering in the air. Lisa's eyes were immediately drawn to the desk, its surface pristine except for a single, sealed envelope with her name scrawled across it in her father's firm handwriting. With a trembling hand, Lisa opened the envelope. Inside, she found a cryptic note from her father. For truths hidden and paths to be revealed, look beyond the books. J.C. Puzzled, Lisa turned her gaze to the bookshelves. Her father's clue was enigmatic, but it spurred her to action. She began to meticulously examine each book and shelf, searching for anything out of the ordinary. After what felt like hours, her persistence paid off. Behind a row of books on maritime law, a subject her father had never shown any particular interest in, Lisa discovered a false panel. With a soft click, it swung open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a collection of old, dusty files and a small digital recorder, its red light blinking as if waiting to be played. Lisa's heart raced as she pressed play. Her father's voice filled the small room, now speaking not of bequests, but of secrets. If you're listening to this, it means I'm no longer here to guide you. What you are about to discover is part of a life I've kept hidden, not out of shame, but necessity. The recording outlined a series of instructions and warnings, hinting at the dangerous nature of the information contained within the files. Each document Lisa sifted through seemed to add another layer of mystery to her father's life, detailing transactions and communications with various unknown entities, coded messages, and dates. It was clear that Jonathan Clark's business dealings extended far beyond the corporate boardrooms Lisa had always associated with his work. As the weight of her father's double life began to press down upon her, Lisa knew she had only scratched the surface. These documents hinted at activities that could explain the bizarre stipulations of the will, but each answer unearthed only bred more questions. Who were these people her father was involved with? And what had he really been a part of? Determined to understand the full scope of her father's hidden life, Lisa decided her next step was to investigate the mysterious beneficiaries named in the will. Her legal training and natural tenacity drove her to approach this task with methodical precision. She started by compiling a list of the names from the will, cross-referencing them with her father's files, and searching for any public records that might shed light on who they were and their connections to Jonathan. One name in particular, Michael Torran, appeared multiple times across various documents in the hidden compartment. A deeper dive into public databases revealed that Torran was a middle-aged man with a sparse public record but numerous corporate affiliations, many of which seemed to be shell companies. Intrigued and wary, Lisa reached out to her contacts in the legal and financial sectors, setting up meetings under the guise of routine legal inquiries. Her conversations were cautiously circumspect, as she was acutely aware that her probing might alert those who preferred their dealings remain in the shadows. Each interaction added pieces to the increasingly complex puzzle. It became evident that these individuals operated in a world that thrived on discretion and secrecy, a world her father had somehow been a part of. The more Lisa discovered, the more she understood the potential danger of her quest. These were not just benign strangers who had inexplicably caught her father's favor. They were players in a game that likely extended beyond simple financial dealings or personal loyalty. One particularly enlightening meeting was with an old colleague of Jonathan's, who offhandedly mentioned a discreet club downtown where Jonathan had often attended private gatherings. Armed with this new information, Lisa decided her next step would be to visit this club, hoping to find someone who knew more about these mysterious activities and perhaps even encounter Michael Torrin himself. As Lisa prepared for what might lay ahead, she felt the weight of isolation. Her pursuit of the truth distanced her from her family, who were wrapped up in their own reactions to the will's revelations. Despite the risks and the growing fear that she was stepping into a world she might not be prepared for, Lisa's resolve only hardened. She needed answers, not just for her father's memory, but for herself and the future of her family. As Lisa delved deeper into her father's secret dealings, the impact of the will began to tear at the fabric of the Clark family. The once solid bonds started to fray under the weight of suspicion and greed. The mansion, a symbol of unity and family legacy, now echoed with hushed arguments and doors slamming in frustration. Evelyn Clark, her mother, withdrew into herself, her days spent wandering the rooms filled with memories, her evenings drowned in silence or whispered phone calls with her own trusted advisors. Her grief at Jonathan's death was compounded by the betrayal of discovering a life he had kept hidden from her. Alex, on the other hand, grew more confrontational. His initial shock at being sidelined in the will had evolved into anger and a relentless drive to challenge the will's authenticity. He was convinced that there was a manipulation at play, perhaps even coercion. His arguments with Lisa grew more heated, especially after he learned she was investigating their father's mysterious connections rather than joining him in contesting the will. "Lisa, you're wasting your time digging into Dad's so-called secrets when we should be fighting this together," Alex shouted during one particularly fierce argument in their father's study, where Lisa had spent most of her time. "I'm not convinced the will is wrong, Alex," Lisa replied, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "There's something much bigger behind this, something Dad was involved in. We need to understand the full picture." "You sound like one of his conspiracies," Alex retorted, his tone laced with scorn. "What if you're wrong? What if you're just dragging our family name through the mud for nothing?" Their conversations often ended with no resolution, leaving a chill in the air that was hard to ignore. The family was dividing, and with each passing day, Lisa felt more isolated in her quest for the truth. Meanwhile, the extended family members were not passive. Whispers of legal actions to contest the will circulated, and factions began to form. Some sided with Alex, believing that a united front might restore their rightful inheritance. Others counseled patience, preferring to see what Lisa uncovered before making any drastic decisions. The family estate felt like a chessboard, each member a piece being moved by suspicion and strategy, and at the center of it all was Lisa, trying to hold on to her integrity and the love she still felt for her family. One chilly evening, Lisa received an anonymous tip via email, suggesting that if she wanted to truly understand her father's secret activities, she should visit a small, inconspicuous art gallery in the Arts District, known to be a front for more clandestine dealings. The tipster hinted that her father had been a frequent visitor and that the gallery owner might be more forthcoming after sunset. With a mix of trepidation and determination, Lisa decided to follow this lead. She dressed inconspicuously, opting for dark colors that blended into the night, and drove her car to the less frequented part of town. The gallery, named Whispering Shadows, was tucked between a closed antique shop and a rundown bar, its window displaying abstract paintings that seemed to watch passers-by with veiled secrets. Lisa entered the gallery and was greeted by the faint smell of oil paint and old wood. The owner, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes named Marla, approached her with a guarded expression. "Can I help you?" Marla asked, her voice carrying a note of caution. "I was told my father, Jonathan Clark, used to visit this gallery. I'm trying to understand his interest in art," Lisa said, keeping her tone neutral but friendly. Marla's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing Lisa's intentions. After a moment, she nodded slowly. Jonathan was a man of complex tastes. "Follow me," she said, leading Lisa to the back of the gallery. The back room was filled with pieces that were starkly different from the front displays, darker, more intense, and undeniably more valuable. Marla stopped before a painting that seemed almost out of place with its vivid depiction of turmoil. "He bought this the last time he was here," Marla began, her voice lowering. "Said it reminded him of the struggles within. He talked often about the burdens of legacy." As Lisa listened, Marla shared more about Jonathan's visits, which were always private and often included meetings with individuals who were not typical art aficionados. "It was here," Marla hinted, "that deals were made under the guise of art sales." Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. A sense of danger immediately washed over Lisa as she heard the front door slam shut and footsteps approaching. "Stay quiet," Marla whispered urgently, her hand gripping Lisa's arm. The footsteps grew closer, and a cold voice from the doorway chilled the air. "You're looking into things that don't concern you, Miss Clark." Lisa's heart raced as she realized her quest for answers had just taken a perilous turn, one that showed just how dangerous her father's secrets could be. In the darkness of the back room, at whispering shadows, Lisa's pulse quickened as the threatening voice echoed through the silence. The grip of fear was palpable, but Marla's steady presence provided a small comfort. Without lights, the shadows seemed to dance around them, making the intruder's features indistinct. "Who are you? What do you want?" Lisa managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. The figure stepped forward, the dim light from the street filtering through the front windows, casting a weak glow on his face. "You need to stop digging into Jonathan Clark's affairs," the man said, his voice low and menacing. There are things at play here that are bigger than you can handle." Despite the fear, Lisa's resolve hardened. "I have every right to understand my father's life," she countered, feeling around for something on the nearby table that she could use as a weapon if needed. The man laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "You think this is about rights? It's about survival. Drop your investigation, or you might find out how dangerous knowledge can be." With a final threatening look, the man turned and left, his departure as sudden as his arrival. Once the door clicked shut, Marla quickly moved to restore the lights. The room brightened, and Lisa took a deep breath, her mind racing. "Thank you," she said to Marla, who was watching her with an expression of concern. "I didn't expect any of this." Marla nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and resignation. "Jonathan was a good man, but he was involved in some very deep waters. Be careful, Lisa. Not everyone wants the past uncovered." The drive home was tense for Lisa, every shadow and sound making her jump. She knew she had crossed a threshold tonight. There was no turning back now. Her father's secrets were more dangerous and far-reaching than she had imagined. Upon returning home, she went straight to her father's study, her sanctuary and war room. There she organized her findings and the new information Marla had provided. It was clear that her father's dealings were not just financial, but possibly criminal, involving powerful people who were now aware of her probing. The next morning found Lisa sitting at her father's desk, surrounded by notes and files, her father's voice playing over in her mind from the recordings. She was deep in thought, piecing together every bit of information she had gathered, trying to form a coherent picture of her father's hidden world. Her phone rang, breaking her concentration. It was Alex, and his voice was urgent. "Lisa, we need to talk. It's about the will. There's a meeting today with the lawyers. We need to be united on this." Lisa hesitated. Her relationship with Alex had been strained, but she knew that keeping him in the dark could push him further away. "All right, Alex. I'll be there," she replied, a plan forming in her mind. Perhaps she could use this meeting to gather more allies in her search for the truth. At the lawyer's office, the family gathered once more, the tension from the last will reading still lingering in the air. As discussions about contesting the will commenced, Lisa took a moment to observe her relatives, trying to gauge who might be swayed to her cause. She decided to share a portion of her findings, revealing enough to pique their interest without exposing the full danger of her investigation. "There's more to Dad's decisions than we know," Lisa explained. "I've found evidence of other activities, things that might explain why he left his estate the way he did." The reaction was mixed. Some family members were skeptical, others curious, but all were listening. "If we can understand the whole truth, perhaps we can find a way to not only contest the will, but also preserve our father's legacy," Lisa added, watching for any sign of support. The meeting ended with no firm resolution, but several cousins approached Lisa afterward, expressing their interest in learning more. Encouraged by this small victory, Lisa felt her determination solidify. She would uncover the truth, not just for her sake, but for her entire family, and perhaps even for the unsuspecting beneficiaries who might not realize the danger they were in. That night, back in her father's study, Lisa revisited the digital recorder, listening to her father's words again. Each playthrough revealed a new layer of meaning, a new clue to follow. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but her father's cryptic guidance in the recordings provided both direction and comfort. She was alone in this fight, yet driven by a powerful blend of duty and love, a combination that she hoped would be enough to navigate the treacherous waters she had chosen to traverse. Late one evening, as a storm raged outside, Lisa found herself once again in her father's study, the soft patter of rain against the windows providing a stark contrast to the turmoil in her mind. She replayed her father's recordings, searching for anything she might have missed, her eyes often drifting to the bookshelf that hid the secret compartment, a compartment that had revealed so much yet held so many more secrets. Her focus shifted as she noticed an anomaly in the book arrangement she hadn't seen before, a series of volumes that didn't match the meticulous order Jonathan was known for. Pulling them out, she discovered another hidden mechanism. With a deep breath, she activated it, hearing a soft click from the wall behind her father's desk. The wall slid open silently, revealing a small, hidden room. Lisa stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness, revealing shelves lined with more files, several old computers, and a large map pinned to the wall with various locations marked. Among the files, Lisa found a ledger that listed dates, names, and large sums of money, along with notes written in her father's hand. Each entry was a piece of the puzzle, showing the scope and depth of her father's involvement in clandestine activities that seemed to span the globe. As she sifted through the information, Lisa stumbled upon a series of encrypted files on one of the computers. Her heart raced as she realized these might contain the answers she sought. She set to work, using her father's hints from the recordings to attempt to crack the encryption. Hours passed, the storm outside mirroring the intensity of her focus until, finally, the computer yielded its secrets. On the screen appeared detailed accounts of covert operations linked to both criminal and perhaps governmental entities, suggesting her father had been part of something much larger. a network that dealt with matters far beyond mere business or financial dealings. This discovery was overwhelming, and Lisa sat back, trying to process the implications. It was clear now that her father's legacy was a tapestry of bravery and secrecy, woven with threads of danger that reached far beyond what she had imagined. Exhausted but unable to stop, Lisa continued to explore the depths of her father's hidden room. Among the papers, she found a photo album that seemed out of place. Opening it, she discovered it was not filled with family photos, but with candid shots of various people, some of whom she recognized from the files as the mysterious beneficiaries in her father's will. Beneath the album, a letter addressed to her lay waiting. Her hands trembled as she opened it, reading her father's familiar handwriting. The letter revealed that he had been working undercover, not affiliated with any government agency, but instead embedded within a powerful criminal syndicate with the goal of dismantling it from the inside. The beneficiaries were not merely business associates, but people he had placed in strategic positions, or those who had helped him from within the organization. The revelation shook Lisa to her core. Her father's actions, driven by a moral compass that demanded justice at great personal risk, painted him in a new light. He had made enemies, powerful and dangerous ones, and his will was his way of ensuring those who helped him were taken care of after he was gone. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Lisa knew she had to act carefully. Her father's enemies were now her own, and her pursuit of the truth put her in direct danger. But there was also a deeper drive within her, fueled by the newfound respect and understanding of her father's sacrifices. As the storm outside began to wane, Lisa made a decision. She would continue her father's work, using the information and resources he had left her to bring down the syndicate. To do so, she needed to keep her findings secret from those who might use them for less noble purposes. With the dawn breaking, Lisa gathered all the evidence and secured it back into the hidden room. She left the study with a newfound sense of purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the truth and a determination to honor her father's legacy. The morning light filtered through the study windows as Lisa prepared for another day of investigation. Her discovery of her father's covert life had reshaped her understanding of him and galvanized her resolve to unravel the entire network he had fought against. She knew the risks were high, but the need for justice and the desire to protect her father's legacy pushed her forward. Lisa started by creating a more detailed profile of each beneficiary mentioned in the will, suspecting that understanding their roles could provide insight into the broader operations of the syndicate. She meticulously documented every connection, no matter how trivial it seemed, constructing a web of relationships that spanned from her father's business associates to shadowy figures in the criminal underworld. Her work was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was James, a former colleague of her father's, whose unexpected visit was both curious and timely. James had been a confidant of Jonathan and offered a unique perspective on her father's activities. "Lisa, I heard about your father. I thought you might want to know more about the projects he was involved in," James began, his eyes scanning the room filled with documents and photos. Grateful for any information, Lisa welcomed him in. As they sat down, James shared stories of Jonathan's less public endeavors, including establishing safe houses for those seeking to escape the criminal organization, and detailed several operations that had not been recorded in the files Lisa found. This conversation not only expanded Lisa's understanding, but also deepened the mystery, suggesting that there were still pieces of the puzzle missing. Parts of her father's life that were so secretive, only a few knew of their existence. Encouraged by James's revelations, Lisa decided to reach out to another possible source of information, an informant known only as Milo, who had been mentioned in one of the encrypted files as a key contact in the criminal network. According to the file, Milo had been instrumental in providing Jonathan with inside information. Arranging a meeting through coded messages, Lisa chose a public but discreet location, a quiet cafe known for its private booths. She arrived early, scanning the area for any signs of surveillance. As she settled at a back table, a man approached, his appearance nondescript, blending perfectly with the cafe's clientele. "You must be Lisa. Your father spoke highly of you," Milo said as he sat down, his voice low and careful. He glanced around before continuing, "I'm sorry for your loss, but if you're digging into his work, you need to be extremely careful. You're playing a dangerous game." Milo shared crucial information about the syndicate's operations, including upcoming transactions and key players. He emphasized that Jonathan's role had been more significant than anyone outside the network knew. He warned that the syndicate was still very much active and that they were likely aware of Lisa's movements. The meeting ended with Milo handing Lisa a flash drive. "This contains information your father collected on the syndicate's leaders. It's encrypted, but I trust you'll know what to do with it," he said, standing to leave. "Be careful, Lisa. You're walking in your father's footsteps now, and they lead to some very dark places." As Lisa left the cafe, the weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders. Armed with new information and the flash drive, she felt closer to understanding her father's life, but also more exposed to the dangers he had faced. Back in the safety of her father's study, Lisa plugged the flash drive into an old laptop, its screen flickering to life as she began the painstaking process of decryption. The cafe meeting with Milo had left her more anxious, his parting words a solemn reminder of the risks involved in her quest. As the decryption software ran, Lisa's thoughts wandered to the subtle signs she'd begun noticing: unknown cars parked along her street, fleeting glances from strangers that lingered too long. It was becoming clear that her movements were being watched. Driven by a blend of fear and resolve, Lisa decided to tighten her security. She installed surveillance cameras around the property and changed her daily routines unpredictably. She also reached out to a trusted family friend who had experience in private security to discuss further protective measures. These steps provided a small comfort, but the shadow of surveillance cast a long, unnerving pall over her efforts. Late one evening, as Lisa reviewed the decrypted files from Milo, she discovered surveillance reports and photographs detailing the movements of other key figures in the syndicate, some of whom were linked directly to her father. It was a disturbing revelation that her father's network had its tentacles deep in surveillance and counterintelligence, a mirror to the very threats she now faced. As she pieced together more of the syndicate's activities, Lisa realized the enormity of what her father had been fighting against. His battle had been not just against criminal enterprises, but against a complex web of corruption that infiltrated even the upper echelons of society. This realization made her more determined to expose the syndicate, regardless of the personal cost. One afternoon, Lisa received an invitation to meet with a senior detective at the local police department who claimed to have information about her father's case. Eager for any leads, she arranged to meet him at the police station. Upon her arrival, she was greeted by Detective Alan Marks, a veteran officer known for his integrity and sharp investigative skills. Detective Marks led her to a private interview room, where he shared his involvement in an ongoing investigation into the syndicate that Jonathan had infiltrated. "Your father was a brave man, Ms. Clark. He provided us with invaluable intelligence," Marks explained, laying out files that corroborated some of the information Lisa had uncovered. However, as the meeting progressed, Lisa sensed something was amiss. Mark's questions began to veer uncomfortably close to her own investigations, probing into what she had discovered and who she had been in contact with. The realization dawned on her slowly, a gnawing suspicion that perhaps not all was as it seemed. Her suspicions were confirmed when she excused herself to use the restroom and overheard Marks on the phone in the hallway reporting her responses to an unknown caller, his tone conspiratorial. Heart-pounding, Lisa slipped out of the station, a mix of betrayal and fear clouding her thoughts. It was clear that the corruption her father had fought against was more widespread than she had feared, reaching into the very institutions that were supposed to protect them. Betrayed but not deterred, Lisa knew she had to be even more cautious. Trust was now a luxury she could not afford. She returned home, her mind racing with the implications of Marks's betrayal. That night, she burned the midnight oil, revising her strategy to dismantle the syndicate's network. Her father's fight was now hers, and she was not going to back down, no matter how deep the betrayal ran. Following the unsettling discovery of Detective Marks's betrayal, Lisa felt increasingly isolated. Trusting law enforcement was no longer an option, and she knew she needed allies who were outside the reach of the syndicate's influence. Reflecting on her options, she remembered a name that had come up repeatedly in her father's files: Helena Brooks, a former legal advisor to one of the syndicate's front companies who had turned whistleblower. Lisa reached out to Helena, arranging a clandestine meeting in a quiet park away from potential surveillance. Helena, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 50s, greeted Lisa with a cautious nod. "I heard about what you're trying to do," Helena began, her voice low. "And I know how dangerous it is. Your father helped me get out. I owe him, and maybe I owe you too." Helena shared her insights into the syndicate's operations, confirming much of what Lisa had discovered and filling in crucial gaps. She explained the syndicate's influence extended into various sectors, including law enforcement and politics. Helena had been gathering evidence herself, hoping to find a way to bring the network down from the inside. Together, they began to form a plan. Helena's connections and knowledge, combined with Lisa's access to her father's information, formed a potent force. They agreed to share resources and information, coordinating their efforts to stay one step ahead of the syndicate. This alliance, while born out of necessity, provided Lisa with a newfound sense of hope and camaraderie in her quest. Empowered by her partnership with Helena, Lisa continued her investigation with renewed vigor. A break in the case came unexpectedly when she received a call from an FBI agent named Sarah Bennett, who had been investigating the syndicate for years. Agent Bennett had come across Lisa's name during her inquiries and decided to reach out, sensing a potential ally. Lisa met Agent Bennett at a secure FBI field office, where she was introduced to the broader scope of the federal investigation into the syndicate. Agent Bennett revealed that Jonathan Clark had been a critical informant for the FBI, a fact that shocked Lisa, but also filled in many pieces of the complex puzzle she had been trying to solve. "Your father was instrumental in our operations," Agent Bennett explained, showing Lisa classified files that detailed Jonathan's role in undermining the syndicate's activities. "His death was a significant blow to our efforts. But with your help, we can continue his work and ensure his sacrifices were not in vain." The meeting marked a turning point in Lisa's investigation. With the FBI's resources and legal authority behind her, she gained access to surveillance tools and intelligence that had been out of her reach. Agent Bennett and Lisa formed a strategic partnership, planning their next moves with precision. This new alliance also brought an escalation in the stakes. The syndicate was more dangerous than Lisa had initially realized, capable of ruthless acts to protect their interests. But now, with the full weight of the FBI supporting her, Lisa felt a surge of confidence. She was no longer alone in her fight, and the path her father had paved now had the reinforcement it needed to lead to justice. The growing involvement with the FBI and her new alliances brought Lisa not only closer to unraveling the syndicate, but also increasingly alienated from her own family. The secrecy required for her safety and the integrity of the investigation meant she could not share much with them, deepening the rifts already exacerbated by the initial shock of the will. During a rare family dinner, intended as an olive branch, tensions surfaced. Alex, feeling sidelined and still suspicious of Lisa's secretive behavior, confronted her openly. "What are you hiding, Lisa? Every day you're more and more secretive. What happened to working together as a family?" he demanded, his frustration palpable in the charged atmosphere of the dining room. Lisa, caught between her duty to her father's legacy and her loyalty to her family, struggled to find words that could explain without revealing too much. "Alex, I'm trying to do what Dad would have wanted. I can't say much right now, but please trust that everything I'm doing is to protect our family and uncover the truth," she pleaded, hoping to bridge the gap growing between them. The conversation ended with no resolution, leaving a bitter taste of unresolved grievances. As her family members drifted apart after the meal, Lisa felt the weight of her dual roles, both as the steward of her father's dangerous legacy and as a member of a family that no longer trusted her. With the help of Agent Bennett and Helena, Lisa began to close in on the syndicate's core operations. They had identified a crucial meeting where key syndicate members were scheduled to convene, likely to discuss major operational shifts in response to the pressures Lisa and the FBI were applying. Undercover FBI agents were positioned around the venue, a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city, while Lisa monitored from a nearby surveillance van. The tension was palpable as they awaited the arrival of the syndicate members. Lisa's hands were clenched tightly around the edge of her seat as she watched the live feeds, each minute stretching out interminably. As the syndicate members began to arrive, Lisa's breath caught in her throat. Among them was a face she recognized, not from her father's files, but from her own life. It was Michael Torrin, one of the beneficiaries in her father's will, his presence at this meeting confirming his deep involvement with the syndicate. The realization hit Lisa like a physical blow, her mind racing with the implications. Her father had entrusted part of his legacy to a man deeply embedded in the very organization he sought to destroy. The complexity of her father's choices, the dangerous game he played, became even clearer. As the FBI moved in, signaling the culmination of months of investigation and careful planning, Lisa watched as Torrin was apprehended along with several others. This operation would cripple the syndicate's operations significantly, a victory in her father's long battle against their criminal activities. With the successful raid, Lisa felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. The victory was sweet, but the cost to her personal life, the alienation from her family, and the revelations about her father's life painted a bittersweet picture. The aftermath of the successful raid was a whirlwind of activity. While the FBI processed the apprehended members of the syndicate, Lisa and Agent Bennett reviewed the wealth of evidence seized during the operation. Among the documents were several that confirmed not only the depth of the syndicate's reach, but also hinted at corruption within governmental agencies, a tangled web that her father had tried to dismantle. Amidst this, Lisa discovered correspondences that suggested there might be another, even more critical meeting planned, an emergency session to restructure the syndicate in light of recent disruptions. This presented an unexpected opportunity to strike a decisive blow, and Lisa, along with the FBI, began to lay the groundwork for what they hoped would be the final confrontation. The plan was meticulous. Using information gleaned from the seized documents, they would set up a trap at the new meeting location. Lisa felt a mix of anticipation and dread as she prepared for what she hoped would be the end of her long journey. The operation was risky, and for the first time, she would be in the field, playing a more active role in the takedown. As the day of the operation dawned, Lisa donned a bulletproof vest under her clothes, the weight of it both a comfort and a reminder of the dangers she faced. She was stationed in an undercover vehicle near the meeting spot, her heart racing as she awaited the signal to move in. The operation began under the cover of darkness, the FBI agents positioned strategically around the secluded warehouse that served as the meeting point. Lisa monitored from her position, her breath fogging up the vehicle's window as she watched through binoculars. As the syndicate members arrived, tension mounted. Everything seemed to proceed as planned until an unexpected figure appeared, Detective Marks, the officer Lisa had earlier suspected of corruption. His presence at the meeting confirmed his involvement with the syndicate, adding a layer of personal betrayal to the professional stakes. Just as the FBI was about to move in, an unexpected explosion rocked the night. The warehouse erupted in flames, throwing the operation into chaos. Lisa was thrown back by the force of the blast, her ears ringing and her vision blurred. As she regained her senses, she realized the explosion had been a diversion. Through the chaos, she could see figures escaping from the warehouse, including Detective Marks and several high-ranking syndicate members. The FBI scrambled to respond, but the confusion gave the criminals a critical head start. In the midst of this, Lisa received a call from Helena, who had been monitoring communications. "Lisa, it's a setup. Someone tipped them off. You need to get out of there, now." Helena's voice was urgent, a stark warning in the night. Lisa's mind raced as she took in the scene. The trap they had set had been turned against them, a masterstroke by the syndicate showing they were always one step ahead. As sirens wailed in the distance and the night air was filled with the acrid smell of smoke, Lisa realized the depth of the network they were up against. It was bigger, more entrenched than they had imagined. The night of the failed operation lingered in Lisa's mind like a bad dream. The vivid images of flames engulfing the warehouse, the sound of chaos, and the sight of Detective Marks among the escaping criminals haunted her. It was a stark reminder of the syndicate's deep reach and the dangers of underestimating their resourcefulness. In the days that followed, Lisa and Agent Bennett regrouped to assess their position and plan their next steps. The FBI increased their protection around Lisa, acknowledging that her involvement had placed her in greater jeopardy. Despite the setback, the resolve within the team strengthened. They were more determined than ever to dismantle the syndicate and expose the corruption within the police force. Lisa spent hours in the FBI's command center, working alongside analysts to track down the syndicate's next moves. Through surveillance and intercepted communications, they discovered that the syndicate planned to regroup at a secure location outside the city. This time, the approach would be different. The element of surprise had been lost, and they needed a new strategy. With careful planning and coordination, a new operation was crafted. This one would be a direct assault, with no room for subtleties. Lisa insisted on being part of the action, feeling a personal responsibility to see the mission through, to honor her father's legacy and protect future generations from the syndicate's influence. As the team prepared to move out, Lisa donned her tactical gear, her determination palpable. The ride to the location was tense, each member of the team aware of the stakes. They arrived under the cover of darkness, the secluded compound looming ahead like a fortress. As the FBI team took positions around the compound, Lisa checked her equipment one last time. The plan was clear, and every member knew their role. Silence enveloped the group as they waited for the signal to breach. The go-ahead came, and the night erupted into action. Flashbangs disoriented the guards as FBI agents breached the compound's defenses. Lisa followed closely behind the entry team, her heart racing as they cleared room after room. In the main hall, they encountered armed resistance. A brief but intense firefight ensued, with the FBI agents gaining the upper hand. Lisa, amidst the chaos, focused on her objective, finding the central office where the syndicate's leaders were supposed to be. When they finally breached the office, they found it, papers and computers, hastily abandoned in a clear sign of a recent evacuation. It was a blow. The syndicate had been tipped off again. However, the wealth of information left behind was a consolation. Hard drives, documents, and other materials were quickly secured for evidence. As Lisa sifted through the documents, her eyes caught a series of files labeled with code names, one of which she recognized as her father's alias. Her hands trembled as she opened the file, revealing a detailed account of her father's undercover operations, his connections within the syndicate, and his pivotal role in destabilizing it from within. It was the confirmation and recognition of his sacrifices, a testament to his bravery and commitment to justice. Among the documents, Lisa found a digital recorder, similar to the one her father had used. Pressing play, she listened as one of the syndicate leaders outlined plans for an international expansion, confirming the global reach of their operations. This was more than enough evidence to continue legal actions against them and to implicate several high-profile figures in various crimes. As the operation wrapped up, Lisa felt a complex mix of triumph and sorrow. They had struck a significant blow against the syndicate, but the cost had been high. She stepped outside, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, reflecting on her journey and the justice slowly being served. As the dawn broke over the subdued compound, Lisa stood amidst the quiet aftermath, reflecting on the events that had just unfolded. The successful raid had garnered crucial evidence, but the personal cost to Lisa became increasingly apparent. While she had entered this battle to honor her father's legacy, it had evolved into a profound personal crusade, one that required sacrifices she hadn't fully anticipated. Returning to the FBI field office, Lisa was met with commendations for her bravery and the operation's success, but the celebrations felt hollow. Her involvement had placed her family at risk, her relationships strained to the breaking point. The solitude of her quest weighed heavily on her, a burden she had to bear alone. Agent Bennett approached her with a new development. They had intercepted communications indicating a potential threat to Lisa's family, likely retaliation from remnants of the syndicate. The decision was stark. Lisa could enter witness protection to safeguard herself and her family, effectively erasing her past and starting anew, or continue her fight, exposing herself to continued danger. The choice tormented Lisa. Witness protection would mean losing her identity, her home, everything that connected her to her father. Yet, staying could jeopardize not just her own life, but those of her loved ones. After much deliberation, Lisa chose to remain in the fight, unwilling to let fear dictate her actions. This decision marked a pivotal sacrifice, choosing her father's unfinished mission over personal safety. The consequences of Lisa's decision manifested quickly. Mysterious threats arrived, subtle at first, then overtly dangerous. A shadow seemed to linger near her home, and her family reported strange occurrences. Vehicles parked nearby for hours, unfamiliar faces in the neighborhood. The threat was no longer abstract, it was palpable, chilling. Amidst this escalating threat, a devastating blow was struck. Lisa received news that her brother, Alex, had been attacked, presumably by someone connected to the syndicate. While his injuries were not life-threatening, the message was clear: no one Lisa cared about was safe. This incident plunged Lisa into her darkest moment. Seated beside Alex's hospital bed, watching her brother grapple with pain and fear, guilt washed over her. Her resolve faltered as she questioned the cost of her pursuit. Was justice worth the suffering of her loved ones? The emotional turmoil was immense, pushing Lisa to the brink of abandoning her quest. She contemplated walking away from it all, protecting her family from further harm. However, a late-night conversation with her recovering brother reshaped her resolve. Alex, despite his ordeal, expressed his understanding of the importance of Lisa's mission. "You have to finish this, Lisa. Not just for Dad, but for all of us," he urged, his voice weak but firm. His support, unexpected and profound, rekindled Lisa's determination. She realized that backing down would mean letting the syndicate win, allowing them to continue their reign of terror unchallenged. Reinvigorated by Alex's support and the realization that her family, though scared, stood behind her, Lisa returned to the FBI office the next day. She met with Agent Bennett, ready to discuss the next steps, her spirit renewed. They would tighten security around her family, and she would push forward, knowing that the endgame was in sight. With her brother's encouragement fueling her renewed resolve, Lisa dove back into the investigation with a clear focus to dismantle the syndicate's remaining operations and bring those responsible to justice. Her collaboration with the FBI intensified as they leveraged the evidence gathered from the raid to target high-ranking members and their financial networks. As part of the new strategy, Lisa worked closely with Agent Bennett to trace the syndicate's assets, leading to significant financial seizures that crippled their operations further. This aggressive approach began to show results. Several key figures in the syndicate started turning on each other, seeking plea deals in exchange for information. It was a sign that the structure they had worked so hard to maintain was finally beginning to crumble. During this time, Lisa also engaged with cyber specialists at the FBI to track down the syndicate's hidden communication channels. Through meticulous work, they uncovered a series of encrypted messages that revealed a planned meeting between the syndicate's last standing leaders. This was the opportunity Lisa had been waiting for, a chance to capture the core members who had evaded them so far. The operation was set for a remote industrial site. Lisa insisted on being part of the tactical team, despite the risks. As they approached the location, every step took her closer not just to the end of her quest, but to fulfilling her father's legacy of justice. The operation unfolded under the cover of night, with Lisa and the FBI tactical team in position. They waited in silence, the tension palpable in the cool night air. As the targets arrived, unaware of the ambush awaiting them, Lisa felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of all her efforts. As the signal was given, agents swiftly moved in, surrounding the syndicate members before they could react. Lisa watched from a nearby position, her heart racing as arrests were made without incident. Among those captured was the elusive Michael Torren, the man her father had unknowingly entrusted and who had played a significant role in the syndicate. With the key players in custody, the impact was immediate and profound. The syndicate's operations were effectively dismantled, and its influence began to wane. For Lisa, the success of the operation was bittersweet. She had achieved what she set out to do, but the journey had changed her, costing her much personally. In the days that followed, as the legal processes unfolded, Lisa took time to reflect on her journey. She visited her father's grave, a conversation long overdue. "We did it, Dad," she whispered, the wind carrying her words. "Your fight wasn't in vain." It was a moment of closure, of peace after the long storm. The syndicate's downfall led to a series of trials, with Lisa often taking the stand to testify. Her testimony was crucial in securing convictions. Her detailed account of the syndicate's activities and her father's role providing compelling evidence. The trials were widely publicized, drawing attention to both the depth of corruption and the bravery of those who fought against it. As the final trial concluded, Lisa felt a profound shift in her life. She had honored her father's memory, protected her family, and ensured that justice was served. The experience had reshaped her, and she knew her future would be different. She decided to start a foundation dedicated to combating organized crime, using her knowledge and resources to help others affected by similar threats. After the intensity of the trials and the public scrutiny that came with them, Lisa found herself seeking a quieter, more reflective space. The success against the syndicate brought her professional satisfaction and public commendation, but the personal costs were still reconciling within her. She needed to mend the strained relationships with her family, who had endured much during her long quest. She arranged a family gathering at their home, not under the shadow of a will reading or a crisis, but for reconciliation. One by one, Lisa spoke to each member of her family, sharing not just the burdens she had carried, but also expressing her gratitude for their support, however reluctant it had been at times. With Alex, the conversation was particularly poignant. They walked through the gardens, a site of many childhood memories, and spoke honestly about their fears, their losses, and their hopes. Alex apologized for his doubts and his anger, while Lisa expressed her understanding of his position and her regrets for the secrecy that had wedged between them. "I always knew you were doing what you thought was right," Alex admitted as they paused by the old swing set. "I wish I'd been there more for you," Lisa smiled, squeezing his hand. "You're here now. That's what matters. Let's move forward, together." This day of heartfelt conversations marked a turning point for the Clark family. Forgiveness was offered and accepted, and while the scars of the past would remain, they began to heal, slowly knitting the family back together. The impact of Lisa's victory over the syndicate resonated beyond the courtroom and her own personal circle. Inspired by her journey and her father's legacy, Lisa founded the Jonathan Clark Foundation, dedicated to fighting organized crime and supporting victims of such networks. The foundation quickly gained recognition and support, becoming a beacon of hope for many who had felt powerless. Lisa threw herself into her work with the foundation, using her skills, experience, and the extensive network she had built to influence change and make a real difference. The foundation's efforts led to new legislations, improved protection for informants, and increased awareness about the complexities of combating organized crime. As she stood at the podium during the foundation's inaugural gala, Lisa looked out at the crowd of supporters, her family among them, proud and supportive. She shared her story, not just the victories but also the challenges, the doubts, and the sacrifices. "This foundation is not just a tribute to my father's work, but a continuation of it," Lisa declared, her voice steady and clear. "Together, we can ensure that his fight against darkness continues, that his legacy is not just remembered, but lived." As the applause echoed in the grand hall, Lisa felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had turned her personal quest into a broader crusade, one that would outlive her and protect others from facing the darkness alone. Months later, Lisa visited the beach, where her family had spent many summers. Walking along the shore, she reflected on the journey she had undergone. The sea was calm, its vastness a stark contrast to the turmoil she had faced. Here, with the rhythmic sound of the waves, Lisa felt a peace she hadn't known in years. She thought about her father, about the secrets he had kept, and the life he had sacrificed. She realized that her understanding of him had deepened and shifted. He was no longer just her father, but also a mentor, in ways she had only come to appreciate fully through her own trials. Lisa also pondered her own transformation. The fight had changed her, molded her into someone stronger, more resilient, and more compassionate. She had lost much, but she had also gained a new purpose, a new family in her colleagues and allies, and a new sense of self. Looking out at the horizon, Lisa felt a connection to her father, a silent acknowledgement of the battles they had both fought. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but she also knew she was no longer the person who had started this journey. She was ready, come what may. Back at the Jonathan Clark Foundation, Lisa reviewed the latest project proposals, each aimed at tackling a different facet of organized crime. Her team, composed of dedicated professionals, many of whom had personal stories that mirrored her own, worked with a shared passion that made the foundation not just effective, but deeply empathetic. Lisa's efforts and her story had inspired countless others to stand up against corruption and crime. Schools, universities, and public forums sought her expertise and her experience as a beacon of responsible action and moral courage. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories, small and large. And with each step forward, Lisa felt her father's presence, his legacy not just preserved in the past, but active and dynamic, driving change and fostering hope. As Lisa closed the files for the day and prepared to leave the office, she paused at the window, looking out at the bustling city. The skyline was backlit by the setting sun, the buildings casting long shadows, but among them there was light, signs of life, of progress, of resilience. Her journey had started with a quest for truth about her father's life, but it had grown into much more, a lifelong commitment to justice, a legacy of bravery and integrity that would continue to inspire and make a difference. The legacy of Jonathan Clark lived on, not just in her heart, but in the heart of the community, a lasting testament to the power of one person to effect meaningful change. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to our channel and supporting us through the thanks button.